Okay, I'm back. So this is the third video for the April 9th class. It's the second one related to climate change. I'm splitting up the videos because I have a feeling I'm going to get another copyright violation, and Canvas limits the size of the videos that I can upload. So I'm going to chop them up. Okay, so continuing with climate change. So here's an article from Forbes. Maybe you've heard of ClimateGate. ClimateGate refers to revelations that some climate scientists had concealed information that may have countered the accepted theories of climate change. So here's an article from Forbes. This is from November 2011, so it's getting a little bit old, but I think it's still valid. So yeah, so these quotes here are from emails that were exchanged between what they're calling ClimateGate scientists. Emails between ClimateGate scientists, however, show a concerted effort to hide rather than disseminate underlying evidence and procedures, and they provide some examples. I've been told that the IPCC is above National Freedom of Information Acts. One way to cover yourself and all those working in AR5 would be to delete all emails at the end of the process. Any work we have done in the past is done on the back of research grants we get and has to be well hidden. I've discussed this with the main funder, U.S. Department of Energy, in the past, and they are happy about not releasing the original station data. Why would you not release original station data? That doesn't sound very scientific to me. Let's see. The original ClimateGate emails contain similar evidence of destroying information and data that the public would naturally assume would be available according to Freedom of Information principles. Open quote, Mike, can you delete any emails you may have had with Keith, re AR4? Yeah, close quote. Keith will do likewise. We'll be getting Casper to do likewise. That is delete emails. I see that climate audit website claimed they discovered the 1945 problem in the Nature paper. I don't know what they're referring to, but we did remember we just saw something in Nature. The trick may be to decide on the main message and use that to guide what's included and what is left out. That is definitely not scientific. I'm not a scientist, but I know that is not scientific. You don't decide on the main message and use that to guide what's included and what's left out. That's not how science works. You analyze data, and whatever the data tells you, that's your message. You don't decide the message ahead of time. I gave up on Judith Curry a while ago. I don't know what she thinks she's doing, but it's not helping the cause, wrote Mann. That must be Michael Mann, and we're going to look at an interview with him in just a minute. He's one of the leading climate change scientists in the United States. I believe he's with Penn State. We'll take a look at him in a minute. I've been talking with folks in the States about finding an investigative journalist to investigate and expose skeptical scientist Steve McIntyre. So they are talking about investigating a scientist who's skeptical. Mann writes in another newly released email. Okay. Investigating a scientist because you disagree with him? I don't know. Doesn't sound good to me either. Open quote, observations do not show rising temperatures throughout the tropical troposphere unless you accept one single study and approach and discount a wealth of others. This is just downright dangerous. We need to communicate the uncertainty and be honest. Phil, hopefully we can find time to discuss these further if necessary. Okay. Open quote, I also think the science is being manipulated to put a political spin on it which for all our sakes might not be too clever in the long run. The science is being manipulated to put a political spin on it. That's my primary concern, is that science and scientific data is being used for political purposes, and that the message, as this guy set up here, determine the message first, wherever it was, decide on the main message and use that to guide what's included. That's my primary concern, that we've got a narrative and then we find the data to fit that narrative. That bothers me very much, and that's the reason why I personally resist giving more power to government agencies to regulate things about what kind of car we can drive, whether we can eat meat or not, whether we can fly on a plane, things like that. They're controlling decisions that we can make as individuals based on this. That's the thing that concerns me. So we're getting down into the meat of it now. Mike, the figure you sent is very deceptive. There have been a number of dishonest presentations of model results by individual authors and the IPCC. There have been a number of dishonest presentations and model results. Okay. So, those quotes don't look good. It looks like they're, spinning the data, and they're, as they say, they're deciding on a message first, and then they're finding the data to fit the message. So that was ClimateGate. This was ClimateGate 2. There was a predecessor to that earlier. I think this suffices to, maybe cast some doubt. All right, so then there is the Paris Agreement. Okay, this is from the United Nations Climate Change. This agreement was entered into by the United States. So there I use passive. The United States entered into this agreement during the Obama administration, and he, instead of going to Congress to get approval, which is something you would normally do, he did it as an executive order or an executive agreement. So essentially it was just Barack Obama as president who entered us into the Paris Agreement. Congress did not vote on it. So as a result, when President Trump came into office, he was able to undo it and remove us from the Paris Agreement by simply issuing another order. Okay, that's the danger of executive orders as president. They allow the president to do things by signing a piece of paper, but it's very temporary, because as soon as he or she is out of office, the next president can undo it again by signing another piece of paper, and that's precisely what happened with Paris. Alrighty. Yeah, and here's an article that explains that. Okay, this is from the Washington Post. The U.S. can't quit the Paris Climate Agreement because it never actually joined. Yeah, it is a, so here, it is a treaty. Yeah, the United States never properly joined the accord. It is a treaty that requires the advice and consent of the Senate. Okay, so according to the Constitution, the Senate must confirm treaties, international treaties with other countries. That was redundant. International treaties. So instead, President Barack Obama chose to adopt it with an executive order last September. So that's what I was saying there. So if you're wondering why it was so easy to get out of Paris, for Trump to just pull the plug on Paris, that's the reason why. Because the previous administration did not go to Congress and get their advice and consent. The money of climate change. This gets into, again, my main concerns. So let's take a look at what this article says. I think I have too many tabs open here. Okay, I'm going to close a few of these. Okay, this is from the National Review. Feel free to pick apart the sources if you'd like. Okay, so it says documents uncovered by the environmental group Greenpeace have attacked global warming skeptic Weehawk Willie Soon for allegedly hiding $1.2 million in contributions from fossil fuel companies. Okay. All right, so this is the point I wanted to make. In truth, the overwhelming majority of climate research funding comes from the federal government and left-wing foundations. I don't know what they mean by that. You can use your own decision there. And while the energy industry funds both sides of the climate debate, the government foundation monies go only toward research that advances the warming regulatory agenda. With a clear public policy outcome in mind, the government foundation gravy train is a much greater threat to scientific integrity. I can't directly vouch for all the things they're saying in that paragraph, but if you'll recall the email that we looked a minute ago where they said decide on the message first and then select the data that supports the message, this verifies that as well. So the overwhelming majority of the climate research funding comes from the federal government. I believe that's true. And they say while the energy industry, the much smaller portion, funds both sides of the debate, the government foundation monies go only towards the research that advances the regulatory agenda. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it. Because what is the government's, if you think about it from the government's and the bureaucrats' perspective, what's their interest? Their interest is, it's really money and power. Okay? The agencies need a budget and they need power to regulate. Where do they get their power to regulate in terms of climate change? It's regulating industry and regulating our choices as consumers. So I think it makes sense logically what they're saying there, that the government only funds one side of it. So this Mr. Ebel, he's the director of global warming and international environmental policy for Competitive Enterprise Institute. I don't know what that is. It probably would not fall under a so-called left-wing organization. It is despicable. It is a despicable and reprehensible attack on a man of great personal integrity. Soon's integrity in the scientific community shines out. He has foregone his own career advancement to advance scientific truth. He could have been named a head of a big university center like Michael Mann. Again, we will see more about Michael Mann in a second. He's right, Penn State. Okay. So here's the EPA website and their research grants. So, okay, EPA funds climate change research grants to improve knowledge of the health and environment effects of climate change, okay, and provide sustainable solutions for communities to effectively manage and reduce the impacts of a changing climate. So if you read that, what's contained in there is that they have already decided that climate change has an impact. They've already concluded that there are health and environmental effects, and they're funding research to improve the knowledge of these things and provide solutions. So they're not saying we're funding research to study climate change to see if it's real or to see if there are alternative theories. It sounds, I may be biased, but it sounds to me like they've already decided, what the agenda is. Yeah, investigating the impact of climate change on air pollution, gases, particles, etc. Okay, that's the EPA. All right, So, you know what? I'm going to save Mr. Linzen I'm going to watch him last. I'm going to stop this here again and for the same reasons, and I'll continue with another video. So I'll be right back.